This is my latest purchase. It is a Newport amplifier, which is basically a Japanese copy of the Fender Vibrolux. It is in pretty good shape. The seller told me that when he turns it on, the tube starts glowing, but there's no sound coming out of it. So we will have to look at that. But before I turn it on, I would like to give it a good clean. And also take a look in the inside to see whether the capacitors has been replaced, because if my sources are correct, then this comes from 1966, which makes it a bit more than 50 years old. So I definitely consider it a vintage amplifier, and those need the capacitors usually replaced. The knobs and the input jacks seem pretty original. Unfortunately, the volume pot has been replaced. I will have to buy a new one, and hopefully it will match the original ones. There's a little bit of, well, not corrosion, I think, because I believe this front panel is aluminum, so it's some sort of oxidation. I don't think this is paint, but these black spots, I will try to remove it with, I don't know, with some sort of alcohol first to try, and then see what happens. And unfortunately also this sticker will have to go. Before I take it apart, this is what it looks like from the back. It is missing the back cover, which is a shame, but yeah, so it is. This is the power cord, which is a 3-prong power cord. I don't know if this is the original, but I think it's replaced, because this ground switch makes me believe that this was not grounded. But anyway, they already replaced it, which is good. So there's the reverb tank, which is quite small. So if I open it up, and it's also inside that paper package, and yeah, we'll see if it's still working, but I see no reason why it shouldn't. But yeah, so 50 years in that paper box, and it looks, I think it looks original. You tell me if it's not. To dampen it a little bit of foam, which also looks original. Oh, look at that, what's that? A little bit of rubber, and that definitely looks 50 years old. It's broken. Good. So it has a lot of tubes, but actually I was missing one tube, so I couldn't find the rectifier tube, so I assume it's a solid state rectification. I believe in the original Vibrolux there's a GZ34 rectifier. This is what it looks like from above. The power transformer, output transformer look original. The filter caps, this one is definitely broken, so I have to replace that, but I think I'm going to replace both anyway. Power tubes, EL34s, BSD. I'm not sure if these are original, but the preamp tubes made in Japan, so I think those are definitely original, and it's also written on it the preamp tube type, which is good. I think I'm gonna leave that. Some scribble on the back, I think I'm gonna clean it off, but the ones on top I think it's useful, so I'm gonna leave it there. So this is what it looks like from the inside, and it seems pretty original. So if I'm looking at the caps, I think these are original. Their brand is Atlas, which I don't know, but I cannot see any bulging or leaking. So I don't see anything wrong with them. So I don't think I'm gonna straight away replace them. I'm just gonna go ahead and try if they work. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, it has definitely been opened because, as I said, it had originally a 2-prong cable, and somebody changed to the grounded one, which is good for safety. But the way but the execution is not the best. So I'm gonna have to find a way to make it a little nicer and cleaner and safer, of course. And I mentioned that no capacitor I can see that is broken. This definitely suffered some mechanical damage or some leaking or some bulging, and this is actually the infamous def capacitor, which is connected to the ground switch. So it's grounding one of the lines with this ground lug. So I'm just going to remove that, because nobody likes a 240 volt shock. And yeah, one other interesting thing is that the way this 3-prong cable was installed, it seems like that the blue wire, which is generally the neutral, has been run through the fuse, and I think usually it's the brown which should run through the fuse, so the live wire. So I think I'm gonna change that. So essentially what I'm gonna do is order some parts and replace some things here. So as I said, the capacitor seems okay. They're not bulging or leaking, but of course that doesn't mean that they are still working. But for now I'm gonna leave them as they are, and then if really they are the problem, then I will replace them. What I'm gonna definitely replace is I'm gonna put in a retainer plug or whatever it's called that's supposed to go in there for the AC in. And also I'm going to replace the 2 filter caps and see if that, well, maybe not solve the issue, but moves us forward. Just as a reference, these filter caps are the Cosmo 47 microfarad for 450 volts, which seem quite high, at least the capacitance value. And after checking the schematic for the Vibrolux, because I couldn't find one for the copy, for the Japanese copy, so if you can find one for this Newport, definitely please send it to me. But at least in here it has a 16 microfarad filter caps. So I don't know, I mean, it definitely doesn't hurt, the higher number. So since last time I cleaned up the amp a little bit. I removed the knobs and also tried to polish them, and also tried to remove the gunk and dirt and a little bit of corrosion from the front panel without too many scratches, and I think it's pretty okay. Once again, from the inside, I said I'm not going to replace the capacitors. I measured them and some of them measured okay, but some not really. So I said I might as well replace all of them since I'm doing it. I also said I'm going to replace the filter caps and put a cable retainer in. So this is the part that I ordered. So these are the new orange drop capacitors, some JJ filter caps. I also ordered a extra knob because one was missing. I had this one. I guess the owner lost it or something. And also I have the cable retainer for the AC input. So the next thing is going to be to put all of those into the circuit. So let's start off with the easiest one, which is the AC cable. I'm going to reuse the existing one. It looks a little bit beaten, but it seems also pretty decent quality, so I'm just going to reuse it. And I have plenty of length. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave quite a bit coming in and then just trim what I need. But basically what I can tell is that it only needs to go into this length, so I don't have to leave too much. Turns out the part I ordered is too small, at least the hole in it is too small, and the original is too big. So what I'm going to do is modify it a little bit. I'm just going to try to drill out a bigger hole. Okay, so with the combination of my drill and a little bit of my soldering station, I was able to make the hole a little bit bigger. I don't know if it's ideal, but I definitely don't want to wait another week for the parts to arrive. So I'm going to try it this way. Boom, in. And in. Good. That's the AC cable done. Filter caps replaced, and I also removed the depth capacitor. Now for the board, hopefully I can get it out without desoldering these cables, because these cables look pretty long, so I might be able to replace them without removing completely the board. hopefully I'll be able to replace the caps or desolder the caps without taking this any more further, but just to give you a look, this is what it looks like. The solder tracks are pretty thick, so it's not your normal thin copper track, it's really soldered in pretty well. I ended up desoldering also these 6 wires, and now really I have full access to the board. I don't know what those bubbles are or white spots. After about 1 hour of soldering, this is what it looks like. Almost all capacitors replaced. So now all that is done, it's time to switch on the amplifier. However, I see that some of the tubes are not glowing. So let me just give it a couple of minutes. I don't know how well you can see it, but the third one from the right, so this one is not glowing. And the same, so that is the ECC8081, and the same happened to the other ECC81. So what I did was I just wiggled the tube around a little bit, and now it's glowing. So what I think is happening is those tubes have been there for 50 years. So I'm just gonna pull them out, put a little contact cleaner on them, and just try to clean those contacts a little bit. It out now with a guitar and a speaker. Unfortunately, I only have a 8 ohm speaker, and the amp calls for a 4 ohm one, but just for a couple of minute demonstration I think it should be okay. There's a ugly distortion on the low end. And I don't know if that's caused by the speaker or by the amplifier. Let's try the other channel. reverb, of course, is not functioning because it's not connected. For that ugly distortion, I had a feeling that the power tubes were bad, so I swapped them out for a couple of Russian 6L6s. I know it's not ideal, but it's the closest one I could find, so let's give it a try. I found the source of the problem. So it turned out that there was a bad ground connection for the first power tube for pins 8 and 9, so I had to resolder that. In the meantime, I thought I would utilize this ground switch. So if you remember, this was connected to the quote-unquote death capacitor, and I obviously took it out for security reasons. And I also noticed that there was a 300 volt and 350 volt high voltage winding, and only the 350 was utilized. So I thought I would connect it to that switch so I can switch between 350 and 300 volts. And I'll check later with the oscilloscope what does this mean in terms of power. After resoldering that grounding wire, after all the modification, this is what it looks like. So in the end, this is what it looks like. I cleaned up the cabinet a little bit, also cleaned up the faceplate, so it's now nice and shiny. Well, maybe not shiny, but at least clean. I changed the first knob. It's a little bit different, but I think it's okay. And in the back, I made a couple of changes. So first of all, I removed the grounding switch. So now it works as a, well, let's say a switch between 350 and 300 high voltage winding. And I also added a tremolo switch, so now I can ground it with a switch and I don't need to plug in a foot switch. Oh, and by the way, I also found someone made the schematic printed out specifically for this amplifier. So this is a Fuji electronic Newton amplifier, and I'll add it to the description. A link to this schematic.